I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay.
Hi guys, welcome to Paps and Power Socks with Dee. Today we're going to be talking about LEEP procedures and what that means and what my experience was with the LEEP procedure in my journey with cervical cancer. And again, just to remind you, the reason I'm doing this is to bring awareness to cervical cancer and to hopefully reach out to women who are just diagnosed with cervical cancer, trying to find more information about it, to help you guys see that there's other women out there that might be going through the same thing, and to give you an idea of what to expect from certain procedures or things that you're going through. So please keep watching. I try and do these every week. I'm a busy mom though, so it doesn't always work out, but I try and do cervical Sundays and weekday wellnesses on Wednesday, where I kind of talk about how I'm trying to return to fitness after this whole rigmarole with cervical cancer. But today we're talking about the LEEP procedure. Stick around. I'm going to fold laundry while I do this, so I got stuff to do. Watch the video, hit subscribe, like it, and watch it all the way through, and that will help me get the word out of cervical cancer awareness to other women out there. Keep watching. Okay, so today we're talking about LEEP procedures and what that means. Well, a LEEP procedure is when it's a local procedure. At least for me, it was a procedure that was done in the colposcopy clinic. And what they do is they actually, so if you think of the colposcopy clinic, you can see my last video about colposcopy clinic visits. And if you think of a colposcopy clinic like a glorified pap smear where they look at everything with the camera, they set you up for the LEEP procedure the exact same way. So you're up in the stirrups. I chose to ask my family doctor for a mild sedative for this because I was really, really nervous. So I had an Ativan before the procedure, which the gynecologist knew that I was taking because I was really nervous about it. And I find it really uncomfortable to have these. I found it really uncomfortable when I had my cervix lasered, even though you're frozen. And so I was not looking forward to the LEEP procedure because it's very similar to that. So I asked for a sedative. So I took a couple Ativan before I went. So I had my husband accompany me to the clinic for the LEEP procedure. The LEEP procedure is done to do further diagnostic. So I was initially, when the swab, the initial biopsy where they take just a swab and a little pinch of the tissue, I was diagnosed with AIS, adenocarcinoma in situ. And so what the LEEP procedure does is it wants to see if that adenocarcinoma goes deeper into the tissue or if it's just sitting on the surface, kind of like a skin cancer kind of idea, but just basically sitting on the surface, not infiltrating into the tissue like an invasive cancer. So if you think of AIS or adenocarcinoma in situ or carcinoma in situ is just staying where it is. It's not going anywhere. Then adenocarcinoma, just regular, would be invasive. So that's what they're trying to find out. So they initially diagnosed me as AIS, and then the LEEP procedure was done to see if that diagnosis was going to stick or if there was invasive cells that would show up. So what they do for the LEEP procedure is they actually take like a cone of from the cervix. So it's a little loop, a little wire loop that they use using electrocautery. And so you're up in the stirrups, going back to kind of what you look like. You're up in the stirrups just like you would be for a pap exam, just like you would be for a colposcopy visit. You're up in the stirrups, and then what they do is they freeze your cervix. Ooh. And that to me is actually the worst part of the whole thing. Because I find that actually quite painful because they're squirting around your cervix with lidocaine it's, or whatever the solution is that they use, but I think it's lidocaine. It hurts. I'm not going to lie, that part hurts. So they freeze your cervix with lidocaine. And then they use the wire loop for the LEEP, and it's LEEP's electrocautery loop excision procedure, I think. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but they use a wire loop to get a deeper piece of the cervix. So if you think of the cervix again as like a little donut, I've talked about that before. They take the wire loop and they're doing they're cutting a piece out of the cervix, like a cone-shaped wedge. And so that is going to give them a bigger sample of tissue. So kind of like a thumb size piece of tissue, I guess, that then they can send for histology being where they're going to look at those cells and see how deep do they go beneath, if this is the surface, how deep do they go beneath the surface, do they go into the lymphovascular space. So that's a really important term when you're dealing with cervical cancer, because the lymph system, cervical cancer likes to go into the lymph system, so into your lymph node. So the lymphovascular space in histology are these little spaces that are go into the lymph system. And so if it's in the lymphovascular space, then it's a higher chance that it's metastasized, that it's gone, it's a higher grade of cancer and it's gone into the lymph nodes. So that's bad news. So they look for lymphovascular space invasion. They look to see if it's spread in the tissues, how much of the tissue is affected. They also look to see if that sample, so if you think of it, this is a very big example, but if you think of it as like a little scoop of tissue, like a triangle, are there cancer cells along the edge of it? And that's the margin. So that's called the margin of the sample. And if there's cancer cells along so those adenocarcinoma cells, if it's reached the margin of the sample, then that's called a positive margin. And that's bad, because that means that they didn't get it all with the LEEP procedure. So you want to have, when you get these samples done, you want to have negative margins, which means there's no cancer cells touching any of the sides of that sample. So that's what they do. They take the sample, you're frozen. There's a bit of a smell because it is electrocautery. So it's cauterizing the tissue as it takes the sample. When they did it, again, I was very nervous, but it gives you like a really cramping feeling in your abdomen when they're taking the sample. So it's not that it hurts, but it is uncomfortable. Again, you are frozen down there, but it's not a fun procedure. The other option for further diagnostics is a conization, and that's actually done under a general anesthetic usually. I had asked for a conization because I really didn't want to be awake for this, but just the timing of when this happened for me, it was right before Christmas in December when I was initially diagnosed on December 19th. And so with the Christmas break in there and people on holidays and lab offices and closed and things like that. Actually that was later. Sorry. Yeah, no, I asked for a conization, but they said because it's a general anesthetic, they wouldn't be able to get me in for that until the beginning of January, and they wanted to move more quickly than that. So I was able to get in for the LEEP procedure 2 weeks after I was diagnosed with AIS. Sorry, a week after I was diagnosed with AIS. So that was actually really nice and fast. So they wanted to find out how much cancer there was fairly quickly. So that's why they did the LEEP procedure versus the conization. And conization is a very similar thing. They take a wedge of tissue, but it's done under general anesthetic. They use slightly different procedure, and it's done with a different sort of tool. And I think they get a bigger sample for that. Anyways, so I had the LEEP procedure. My husband came with me, as I mentioned, because I had taken the Ativan to help calm me down. If you bring somebody with you, make sure that they are not going to faint. Again, there is a bit of a smell. because it's cauterizing things. They make you wear a mask and a hairnet for the procedure. My husband had to wear a mask and a hairnet because he was in there holding my hand, and just that kind of claustrophobic feeling. He started to get a little woozy. Oh, he'll be upset for me saying that, but he did. So there was a few minutes there where everybody in the room was a little bit more concerned about what was going on with him than they were about me. So if you're bringing somebody, make sure that they can handle it. It takes about 20 minutes. It's very fast. And then afterwards, you do bleed a little bit, like a period. And so they give you big pads to go home with. Recovery process was a couple days. I felt like achy and crampy. Yeah, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't any more than like a biopsy really, except I had more cramping. So I was uncomfortable, but nothing that Tylenol and Advil couldn't help with. And then the time for the results was 2 weeks. So after I had the procedure, it was 2 weeks until I got the results from that test. And that's when it came back as invasive adenocarcinoma, because I did not have negative margins. I had positive margins. So that's the LEEP procedure. That's how that kind of goes. And I hope you find this video really interesting. It has been an interesting experience for me, and I'm happy to share it with you guys. Get your PABs, keep watching, and I love ya.
I'm
Bye.
okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. I will not feel bad today. I'll be happy if I want to. I will be the sun. I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay.